So if you haven't watched the short, you can go check out the shorts channel. It has the short of this video if you don't want. This is just the explanation of how I did this button, right? It's pretty simple. So yeah, let's just start. I'm gonna have the code here. I'm not gonna write it. Just gonna explain the code. So first thing is, of course, to get most of that done, you just put exclamation point. There you go. You get most of that done. And then we go to the head. First thing that we do is we import our uh, font from Google Fonts. You can go to Google Fonts and get the font. Just type in the name and it'll give you the font. After you do that, just click on the font, get embedded code, and then just copy this code that you'll see in the page. Put it there so we could use the font. Make sure that you link your CSS. I called it styles.css. For this button, it's actually this button that you see right here. It's actually well, okay, I'm not gonna say easy, but yeah. To make this button, first of all, you need to make a div. This is important. We'll explain inside of the CSS why. Then we have our button, as you can see, very simple. Then I made a span inside of an SVG. I was trying out something. I don't know if you really need to make a span, but yeah, the SVG sometimes I got in the past, I got into little problems with the SVG. So I always like to put the SVG inside of a div because I mean, I'll explain it one day on JavaScript. Okay, so that's basically it. I'll make sure that I make a GitHub and put the code in GitHub so you guys can just take it. Okay, comes to this CSS. The first thing that I do is this, I get the div that we created, and this is like why we created div. We add a position relative, right? See, if we didn't have two elements inside of a div, which is, of course, this div right here, if we didn't have two elements, then I wouldn't make this. But the reason why I make position relative, well, I'll just remove it and we'll see what happens, right? See, now if I hover, the arrow that I had is just not there, right? Well, because, I mean, let's actually go ahead and find the arrow. So the arrow is at the top right. So let me explain something, and you really need to understand this, okay? When it comes to using position absolute, right? If you are inside of a div, like here, right? So let's explain this. You're inside a div, any element inside of it, right? Either the button or the span, if you give them a position absolute without the div having position relative, what would happen is that it will be a position absolute of the whole website. So as you can see, for the span right here that we have, uh, because it is on position, and by the way, it's not visible, but I'll make it visible. It's at the top right, you see? See, because we don't have a position relative on the box that it is in, what happens is that it goes on the whole page, okay? It doesn't matter where you're at, it will always be on the whole page, right? So as you can see here, I put top 4 pixels and right 25 pixels. If I put left, actually 0 pixels, it'll go to the left. I put left 0 and it goes to the left of the whole page, okay? Even if you're at the very, very bottom, if you put top 0, it'll get you to the top of the screen. But of course, that's not what we want. What we want is, we want it to be inside of the box, right? Which is the shop, this shop box, which is this div. So we always need to add a position relative to that div. And by adding position relative, look at the arrow, it's gonna go inside of the box, okay? And then of course, we'll talk about it later, how we did it. Let's just make it hidden for now. For the button, it's very simple. Choose a height, choose a height with border 0. I mean, what? Yeah, I just looked and I saw border, so no need for a border 0. You get your background color. I did the radius. I put it at 10 pixels, and I saw that 8. This is like preference, right? So you guys can you can change whatever border radius you like. It doesn't really matter. It's a preference thing. Letter spacing, I did a little bit of letter spacing. Font family, the one that we talked about earlier. Font weight to make it a little thicker so you could see it better. Choose a font size that you like. Then a transition is important because see, without a transition, look at this, right? Anything that we do in the hover will not be transitioned. Instead, it will just appear there, right? So as you can see right here, the box is supposed to go up. I'm sorry, the shop is supposed to go to the left, and as you can see, it does go to the left, but it kind of just it doesn't transition. So if you wanted to transition, do a transition. I do ease in out, meaning that I want to ease in, meaning I want to do the animation at the start, and then I want to do the animation at the end. Okay. So that's why you do ease in out. Cursor pointer, so when you hover, it gives you that cursor because this is a button and this would take you normally to the shop, right? So of course, this is a button, but of course you can change it to a hyperlink. Then we did our border 1 pixel. Make sure when it comes to border, you always need to specify what it is. I did solid and I put a color there. So if I remove the solid, you'll see that the border will just not show, right? Because you need to specify. So it's solid, it's a solid color. Then I added the outline right here. I added the outline and I'll explain it later. The outline is very important, right? When you click on tab, it, as you can see, it like shows you, and when you click on it, also shows you the outline. That's pretty important for users to know when they navigate into your website. So they click tab and they get to the shop. That means that that's something that is clickable, right? Okay. Then comes to the span. I'll just make it visible. So let's see. So height and width, you can make it smaller and bigger. That's preference. Position absolute is the one we talked about earlier. Then the top 4 pixels and right 25 pixels. You could kind of like count these by, for example, the button is a height of 25 pixels. If I want to put like the span in the very middle, you can do some calculations, right? So for example, the span is like 12 pixels, right? So it takes 12 pixels of the box. So what I do is I I go to my calculator. Well, where is my, okay. You could do like 25 and subtract from it 12, which is the height of the arrow. You'll find 13, and then 13 you divide it by 2, and it's like 6.5. So there's like 6.5 pixels at the top, 6.5 pixels at the bottom. Then you remove the border, which is 1 pixel. So it's one pixel at the top, 1 pixel at the bottom. That's 2 pixels, and you'll find yourself at 4.5. So if you put this let's go down here. If you put this at 4.5, it will be, that's the middle, right? Even though it doesn't really look like the middle, but that's the middle, was just some calculations, right? But we don't really care about calculations. We want it to just look, you can just guess it, but if you want to calculate it, that's how you calculate it, basically. Okay. So Z index, this is for it to be at the top. I think if it's a position absolute, it's a floating object, so you don't need Z index. But if you can't find it, then add Z index. That's like to basically it's the index of Z. You know, like how there's X, Y, Z. Z is like 99, meaning that I want it to be on top of the rest. Pointer events none. This is important because you see when you hover over the button, if you don't put pointer events to none, when you hover over the the arrow, it will unhover because you are on the arrow and the hover is on the button and not the arrow. So I'll just show you a quick example here. If I hover over the button, it looks, but if I go on the arrow, the hover is removed because I have my cursor not on the button that I did the hover on, but instead on the arrow. So that's why we need pointer events. Then, of course, we need a transition because later on the hover, we're going to be moving it and we're going to change the opacity and we want it to transition instead of just showing it there, right? So we add a transition, is in out, because it goes in and then out. For the hover, I was gonna make the button go up, right? But I decided to not do that because I felt like it was too much. But this is, we get to an important part that you see that glow that it has. That's box shadow, right? Now, when it comes to box shadow, you can go on Google, search up a box shadow generator, and basically just look at whatever you like, and then you can adjust it through the settings right here or on the website. We did a padding right. This is to move the shop to the left, right? There you go. When we hover, the shop moves to the left, and it's more of like a transition just so we can show like, hey, listen, the arrow is like moving, right? And the shop, so it's like, I mean, yeah, you get the point. Then you add a background color, and the color is for the text, right? So we add color white there is for the text. I like using hex codes. As you can see, the color is like black, and then it goes to white. Now this is something important, and you really got to focus on this, right? So let's explain before the focus. The focus, I put an outline, and then it was transparent, and I just added a color, as you can see right here. It was transparent, and at the bottom here, I added the color, which means that, as you can see, it's like it appears. It's like an opacity goes from 0 to 1, right? So it's like it appears there. If you don't do this, instead you decide to put the outline in these two, you put them right here. I mean, not transparent. You put the outline right here. Then what happens is, you see that bad animation? Because it's going from an outline of 0 to an outline like 0.15. So it does that animation that it doesn't really look good, right? So I just had the fix done like this, right? Now something very important, right? Because this is the part that most people want to understand. Which is the arrow, how it like, fades in and goes to the right. Okay, it's not really difficult for people. It's just like this right here. This is something that I had to learn the hard way, right? Which I don't know. I'm just gonna call it a mustache. Honestly, I don't know what it's called. But basically, what that means is if you hover on top of this, look at this. It tells you button hover, right? And then the element under it that is a span. What I'm basically saying, I'm telling it, I want, this is how you have to like have it in your head, right? When you hover on the button, I want the span to be, right? And then to be these properties, right? So that's basically what you're doing. That's basically what you're doing. So you're telling, hey, when you hover the button, I want this span to be like this, right? So that's why, of course, we use that little mustache. Then, of course, adjust the right to like 22 pixels. But this is because like we have it at 25, so I wanted to like move a bit. As you can see here, it moves to the right when it fades in. Visibility, visible. I'm not sure you need this, but like always have it to be like safe. I had some problems in the past, so it's like I always leave it there. You'll see when we do a navigation, explain that better. And then the fill goes from, of course, black to white. Yep, there it is. So it like fades in better. That's how you do the button. Actually, I think like the thing that you should learn from this the most, right, are the properties and like what they're actually doing, and like the concept of like the hovers. For example, here, if you remove this, then it's just not gonna work. If you hover, you'll see that we do this when the element is inside of the button, not outside of it, right? And there's something else, which I think it's the end, right? Is it the end? I think there's something with and or so, or equal or something like, oh, or plus. Okay, yeah, it's plus. So plus is when the element is right under the button, right? So if the button and the span is right under it, see right here it works. But if you actually go to the index, and you create a div, for example, here, div, not even a div, let's just say a nav, right? It, because the nav is the element that's right under the button, then as you can see, this doesn't work. So the plus is for it being the first occurrence. I mean, not the occurrence, the first thing under the button. We use a plus. Right here, of course, we can use a plus in the little mustache thing, but like I'd rather use the mustache because it's like, it keeps always finding the next thing. But of course, you could use the plus if you want to. And yeah, that's basically it. That's right. That's how you make this button. Uh, Definitely, right. As I said, you got to be learning more the, like, you have to be learning the concepts of this, right? You can't just like, you can copy paste this, take it into your project, you can change it however you like, right? Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more explanatory content like this. Thank you for watching.